Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today started out on a quest for a hobby. An article about soap and candles making later, and they're now making and distributing over 40,000 candles a year. Please welcome the owners of Wash and Wik, Gary and Ariel Bruckner. What's going on, guys?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. Thank you for having us. We're excited. Excited to be here.
Thanks for having the lunch break, and thanks for letting me be at Wash and Wik headquarters, so we can kind of chat a little bit. First question I always ask is, what is your go-to sandwich or lunch?
Go-to sandwich would have to be an Italian.
Okay.
Love an Italian. The Stasio's sandwich from Stasio's is like their upgraded Italian. Love that one. But any Italian style sub is really good.
What about you, Gary?
Yeah, I think I'm on the Stasio's bandwagon right now too. I love their Cuban. If I just need a sandwich, we go to their Cuban.
I've never had their Cuban.
Oh, it is so good.
So good.
Really?
Yeah. I was born and raised in New York, so I'm so used to delis and just sandwich shops, mom and pop shops all over the place. So it was really cool when we walked into Stasio's the first time. We're like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Pretty amazing. So let's talk a little bit about, tell me a little bit about how it started. Because obviously I brought it up in the intro, but I want to know, tell the story about how, how it kind of went. You both had corporate hospitality jobs. Mm-hmm. How did it kind of come about that you're like, oh, I want to do candles and I want to do soap. Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll kind of go from there, and we'll kind of talk about the evolution of it.
Yeah. So we were both working in hospitality, both in food and beverage, and we were just so inundated with that lifestyle. Everything we did was food and beverage. All of our friends were in the same industry. And I know that I was just looking to kind of do something else. A lot of people are more multifaceted. They have other things going on. And I was just looking, let's start something new, a hobby. And we were on vacation. And I kind of off the cuff was just, hey, I kind of want to start a hobby. I've seen all of these really cool soaps people are making, maybe soap and candles. And this is, literally poolside, margarita in hand, off the cuff statement.
Yeah, just having conversation.
Right. Yeah. And we get home, and this is where I have to give Gary props, because I said that, and then he goes and he just buys some stuff. And we get it. We make one set of candles, and he was hooked.
Yeah.
He was hooked. And after that, I think you could see the entrepreneurship flare kind of go up in his mind. And he was just like, okay, we're gonna try this out.
Right. So Ariel mentioned that, we're poolside, like she said, in Marco Island, the beautiful place. Should not have my phone in my hand. But I think the rest of the trip, I was just scrolling. I was like, oh, at the time, in 2018, I was like, oh, at the time, candle industry, $3 billion industry a year. This is kind of cool. Soaps and candles, you melt things, you pour them. Very cool. I was like, those are correlated. I was like, and then I started thinking, and I think 72 hours or so later, I think I had a name and our initial logo design, and I'm like, let's try this. So
I don't suggest hobbies anymore.
No, I was going to say, is that normal? Is that a normal thing though for you, Gary? When things happen, you just kind of jump, and then how does that ebb and flow with the two of you? Because personality wise, because that's kind of, sometimes you're like, hey, I was just talking. I didn't say anything. I was like, you can't even assume anything. I'll be like, oh, I really would love to go to, and he's like, we already booked a flight. I'm ready to go. Let's go.
So in certain respects, 100%.
Okay.
When Gary gets an idea of, we should have this new product, the next 3 days will be spent Google searches, images, links to that product until he figures it out. And I'm definitely the mindset of, let's bring it down a notch. How does this relate? Does this make sense? Did you just go through a total time suck, distraction? Or is this something that will be a value add? But it's one of those situations where if he didn't get on those tangents, we wouldn't necessarily be bringing in new product. Because I do take a little bit more of the reality check role. So I need some of that craziness.
Yeah.
to keep innovating and keep doing new things.
Right. And I think every crazy person needs that reality check person to pull them back to reality. And I think that's the balance that you're asking about.
Yeah.
Hundreds of ideas in my head. They don't all come out because I know it won't get approved by the gatekeeper. So
No, but I also think that's great, that the fact that you guys kind of balance each other out, because that's always a tough one when if you kind of go. So that's kind of amazing. So let's talk a little bit about so you kind of came up with the logo, you did all that, you guys kind of started doing the process of it. I got to see kind of where we are today in the process, but the beauty of it is you guys have had to scale through the time. So when you guys first started, let's talk a little bit about that, because that's always kind of the big thing of like, okay, how did you start? What did you do? How did people start knowing about you? And then kind of like, let's talk a little bit about that. And then we'll kind of talk about like how, you guys kind of obviously keep evolving.
Yeah. So, I mean, we started August 1st, 2018. And it was a spaghetti water pot.
Yeah, like think of a really big pasta pot of boiling water. And then
the pitcher, we made a double boiler, and we were melting wax on our stovetop. And, we started off, we knew we needed to start small because we started putting things in our cart, and then shipping at the time was not as expensive as now, but, things add up. So,
to boil a pitcher of wax to make 4 candles, and 4 like small candles, to boil that pitcher of wax to get the wax to melt probably took 10 plus minutes. So 10 to 15 minutes. So to make 4 candles was just 15 minutes of just waiting time. And there was no way to, in that method, increase that manufacturing. It was...
So we were doing that, and while we at the time because of costs, we ordered generic candle labels, so we were hand stamping every candle label. I would just buy different stamps in the font we chose at the time from Zazzle, and different colors would be different stamps. So we decided to stick with like 6 cents, and soap, we were using like melt and pour soap, and we were making those as well. And whatever we could make at nights or during the day, if we were working in the restaurants in the morning or the nights, we would make them. And then people start to they were able to learn about our brand through markets, right? And I think that's where we first met you, Biggie, at East End, right?
Yep.
Up top before it was the Neighbors.
It was one of the night markets.
Exactly. Yeah. Like
I remember
once
that.
a month, every Friday, we started to just meet people there. And we, all the hospitality experience, it was kind of natural for us to, one of us stood behind the table, one of us stood in front of the table, and we didn't want to sell what we had. It was more, let's start a conversation. If the conversation led to you liking our product, that was just a cherry on top.
Yeah.
Happy circumstance for sure. I think it carries over to, we wanted people when they passed to feel like guests. And when people reach out with order requests, I still refer to them as guests. And that's definitely a mentality, and I think we both have it, which has helped us. But from that pot stovetop method, we went to what we thought at the time was a how many pound melter?
It was a 22-pound melter. It was like basically someone converted a crock pot, like a ball crock pot for us.
And then we went from that to when we went, we went from stovetop in the kitchen to we converted a bedroom with this like crock pot style melter. Then we did an official conversion of our garage in our old home. AC'd it, insulated it, pulled the whole 9. And then we went to a larger size, which was, we're getting now into the more industrial sizes. Yeah. And now we have
and from that crock pot, we went to a 100-pound melter, and now we have a 350-pound melter. So we can, if we needed to, pour 700 candles in one sitting. What we run out of is table space because it needs to be flat and level, right? So I still pour 6 candles at a time, hand mix the scent, hand pour it. But we are able to melt the wax in the greater capacity instead of waiting 10 minutes to pour 4 over boiling water.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Ariel, one of the things that I found to be very interesting was the fact that obviously candles are great, but you have to obviously have amazing scents for it. And one of the things that I found very interesting was that you're say it. How do you pronounce it?
Sommelier.
Sommelier, which obviously plays a lot of factors on the sense of smell. Obviously, it's for wine, but the sense of smell is very important when it comes to that stuff. So tell me a little bit about that experience and then how you kind of used some of that, because obviously one of the things that makes your brand so special, I think to me, is the fact that you guys do a really good job of honing in on the smell and being able to capture that smell. So can you talk a little bit about that aspect of it? Because I also know that, it's not just that, but it's also the quality of product that you guys also use as well.
Absolutely. So the idea when you're using it with wine training is to smell a glass of wine and be able to pick out characteristics. Typically a type of apple, if we're talking about white wine, a type of citrus. With red wines, we have red fruits. You have your a ton of different scents. Do you have oak? Do you have butter? Do you have vanilla? And I think that just made me more keen on what was going on in a glass in a small amount of volume.
Okay.
So when someone asks for a cannoli candle, there are a ton of oil houses out there. Let's start there, actually. There are a ton of different fragrance companies that produce fragrances, because cannoli isn't just a scent that exists in the wild.
Okay.
So we do have to get oils from people that make fragrance. There could be a cannoli scent, but it's typically not to the quality that we like. It's not as complex. So I will say, what's in your cannoli? Well, it's a cannoli shell. The shell has a little bit of cinnamon. There is a pastry cream. The pastry cream has a little bit of lemon zest, and I like to put chocolate chips on the end. Okay, so break that down.
Yeah.
We have, let's say, vanilla for pastry, some sort of baking sense, but nothing too intrusive. Is there a lighter flavor of lemon? Is it a candied lemon? Is it a fresh lemon? And then do we put in just a little hint of something chocolatey to make it come alive? So when you all you're layering it. And that's what really makes us unique, is that we blend these scents versus just buying one and pouring it and giving it to you.
Right.
There's a lot more layers to it. And a fun story is we had someone and they wanted a cookie. They wanted a candle to represent one of their cookies, and they're like, it's chocolate and it's orange and it's like pistachio. And I was like, oh, easy. And I kept bringing them samples, and they're like, well, it's like not this orange, it's that orange. It should be less or more or bright. And finally we said, can we just try this thing? Because I don't know what you want.
I was going to say, let me try it.
Right. And it ended up being, it was a candied orange. And I tried it and I was like, okay, I was in the wrong wheelhouse. I was in more like a fresh, think cleaning supply orange scent versus a candied orange scent. So being able just to pinpoint those things, and then using really high quality fragrance.
Yeah, and just being a little modest too, right? You went back to the classically wine trained, right?
Yeah.
So she was the director of beverage for a very large, hotel that had many restaurants, and I think your training in that and bringing on food pairings and wine pairings and all of that, that on top of she cooks dinner every night, which I'm very lucky. Where all of that kind of goes into where it's almost like she's cooking or baking, but unlike a chef who gets to taste their product along the way, we can only smell it, right? So and we're not going to get the true sense of what it is until it's mixed in a candle. So your mind might be going and making all this stuff, but now we have to wait 4 hours to turn it into a candle, to even test it and try it. So lots of trial and error there, but she's very good at the blending and replication.
So talking about trial and error, how does that work? Like, what do you guys do? How many times does it usually take? I mean, obviously it's not like a one-time thing. How do you keep track of all that? I mean, it's kind of like, it literally is like you're creating a recipe for food, and you have to figure out like, okay, I got to put this much. It's a little bit almost a game of chemistry and a game of trying to the balance of ebb and flow of each.
Absolutely. So we've made our own essentially recipe cards, for lack of a better term, and it says, what scent is it, what company did we order it from, ounces, grams, any other miscellaneous information. So, Biggie, if you came to us and you said you wanted a candle, it would have your name, the date we poured it, so we know everything that's going into it and we can replicate it. And if we give you that sample, you give us feedback and we can go from there. But it's exactly like a recipe.
Yeah, and I'd say maybe 2-3 times. There are certain times where she'll make it. And you get a little preview by sniffing the beaker, and you're like, nailed it, we got it. This is it. Or, and to the point where like a lot of our candles that we have, right, for our own brand, we have 43 different scents right now, and I think a lot of them came from trial and error with other customers, and they just became our scents because we love them so much.
What are the most popular scents, would you say?
In our line,
I think it's seasonal.
Yeah.
Right? So like it's pumpkin chai,
Yeah,
pumpkin spice season right now. So, our pumpkin chai latte is doing really well. And that was one of the original candles. You can tell when a candle came out by the number. So, pumpkin chai latte is, number 5, I believe. So it says hand poured number 5 right on pumpkin chai latte. So that was one of the original 6 that we had at the table. But yeah, that always comes around season. We have autumn right now that does really well. Of course, during the holidays, balsam fir, which is like a Christmas tree.
Yeah. We have all of our holiday scents. So what Gary was saying, Christmas tree, pine, fir, cinnamon roll, things of that nature. I think overall, citrus cotton is still one of our best sellers, and that was the second candle we ever made. So that's a fun one. White tea is just classic, fresh. I don't think we've ever had someone who didn't like it. It's a perfect gift, perfect thing for your house.
I think relax and unwind does really well too. A little bit of eucalyptus, juniper, peppermint. It's that. It's the calming candle that you want. To light in your home after maybe like a hard day's work. So.
And then most recently, we have a sage and cedar candle that has become very popular, but it's more on that musk side. So it's warming, it's musky, almost a little bit like a men's cologne.
Okay.
And that's become very, very popular too. But it is very seasonal. Very seasonal.
Yeah. And I can imagine that, just because those are the things you want to capture during those times, especially here in Florida. But you also aren't just in Florida, because you guys sell in a variety of different places. So let's talk a little bit about that kind of progression. So you guys kind of, as you started progressing, you started growing, started investing more money into it. At what point, because I know Gary right now, you still do the corporate side. Mm-hmm. Ariel, yes. I know you obviously, at the same time when I met you guys had your first child, and now you have another child. Mm-hmm. So you're also balancing that aspect of it. But I also know that you're pretty much doing this full time, at home. You're in your home facility. But at the same time, Gary then will come home, and then he'll start pouring. So tell me a little bit about like at what point that kind of conversation happened. Like, hey, we're ready to now. It's not just doing markets. It's now we're now producing, and it's like a full on production.
So really over COVID, things very much so evolved, and the business went from, we almost closed it, to a drastic increase in demand. The result of people being home more often. So that's 2020. We start to amp up. I went back to work after having our first son, and working in hospitality, it was just a little chaotic because no one knew what was going on. Everyone was working, helping out, but in different capacities than maybe what their roles necessarily were. And it was just a very different environment, but also having a kid, it changes what your priorities are. Yeah. So January of 21, we took the leap to me doing that full time. But to be honest, when I left my job, we were still on the fence of if I was going to go back to work just somewhere else, if I should change industries altogether. So it was a little bit of like wait and see. And I did kind of job search a little bit, see if any, what is there a new avenue that would be more, family friendly to having a small child. And then over that time, business just continued to pick up and pick up and pick up, and it was, we were fortunate enough. And so it kind of happened in this organic way of, we're just too busy.
Yeah, I mean, people, it was COVID for 2 years, right? So people were home, working from home. So, I told you when we started, it was like a $3 billion industry. I don't fact check me, but I think it's like an $11 billion industry now, right? So people were at home in their home offices. They just wanted them to smell good. And, like Ariel said, I think May 2020, we're like, maybe we should close this. We haven't gotten any orders, right? And then something, it was just, it hit us like a freight train to the point where, after COVID, we actually didn't really go back to markets or anything like that, just because,
you didn't need to.
The time, and the time that it was taking, after working all day and coming home and doing it at night. But it was super helpful that Ariel was able to leave that corporate side and do this during the day, because we couldn't do it without, we couldn't do it without her, and we're still employees 1 and 2.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I think that's amazing is the fact that I know in the beginning when you both had your jobs, you did exactly kind of what I did. All the money goes back into the business. Mm-hmm. So that way you can kind of help make it self-sustain and be able to do those things. Now you guys are at a point where, I know 75% of your business is not just, 25% of your business is actually your brand that people are actually buying, but then you're also producing amazing candles for 75, kind of like in that white label, private market, which is amazing. How did that come about? Did people approach you? Did you approach them? Was that just one of those things that someone smelled your candles and was like, man, this is great, I want a candle? Is that kind of how it went? Like, tell me a little bit about kind of how that kind of, because I know that thing kind of probably steamrolled and then and you just kind of kept growing and growing.
So it happened at one of the markets. Someone came up to us and they happened to own their own business, and us being our friendly selves, we're just, hi, how are you? Is this your first time here? Oh, what do you like? Have you tried X, Y, and Z place? That's some of my favorite places. And we're just chatting with them, and very organic interaction. Don't even think they bought anything. The next month we were at the same market, and they came back and said, oh, I bought one of your candles and it's my favorite one. I'm opening up a secondary location and I would like you to make candles for it. And we're like, oh, this is pretty cool. Sure, we'd love to. The second location isn't opening for a while, so we'll be in touch. And we just kind of left that being like, okay, like, great. Like, great. If that happens, happens, awesome. And then how long? Like, a decent amount of time went by, and Gary reached out to them and was just like, hey, do you remember us? And they immediately said, yes, absolutely. We've been meaning to talk to you. And that was our first private label client.
Right. And I'll go ahead and say it, right. And then that turned into a relationship with Gideon's, right? Yeah. So like, that was, we're very grateful for that relationship. Right. So that's how that happened, and we're so fortunate that we work for all these local companies. We make Kelly's ice cream, we do salty donut candles, we do Bros with Hose at the Jungle Room,
We just did a private label for Maffrey's.
Yep.
Yeah.
So from that one interaction, it really has opened up this whole world of what is Orlando small business, which has been so cool. We wouldn't know about it otherwise, if we didn't do this.
Yeah.
And it's cool. People, people flip over our candles. It says proudly hand poured by Wash and Wik, and then that turns into the website sales.
But to answer your question, we have had a bunch of people reach out from mainly social media, and they'll say, oh, I'm a realtor in Dallas. Can you put my logo on a candle? We just did a really cool project with Mall of America. They were opening up a haunted house, and again, social media reached out. They have haunted characters, and they wanted scents to go with them and merchandise for their shop. And so it really is these very organic interactions with people. And the fact that we are employees 1 and 2, we can do such a smaller quantity than if you were to go online and say, like, I want to manufacture a candle. They're probably going to quote you 5,000, 10,000 units versus, oh, you're a small gift shop and you want 50? Okay, we can do that. Yeah. We found this niche of being able to accommodate smaller orders that probably would have get overlooked.
Yeah. And there's a creative side to that too, right? And like, I think my personality, I thrive off of that part too, because it keeps you from getting a little bored, right? Nothing's mundane. You're not pouring every single night. You're working with a customer to bring their vision to life,
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the big things. It's kind of like, I look at it as when I talk to other like chefs in restaurants, like the fact that, or bakers, like where they kind of like, you make the constant stuff that you always do, but at the same time, that's the fun part, is being able to do the creative aspect of it, being able to come up with new scents, be able to come up with new ideas. That's the fun part that everyone loves. Everyone loves that part of it. I know like Kelly's favorite thing from Kelly's Homemade Ice Cream, her favorite thing is to do like research and development and try to create new flavors and flavor profiles and things like that. That's like always her favorite part of the aspect of it. So that kind of gives you that. And that's one of the fun parts about what you guys are doing, which I think is, I think it's amazing. You guys do, the candles are absolutely amazing. So that's kind of one of the big things. Now, speaking of that, since the name is Wash and Wik, let's talk a little bit about like how that kind of transition, because obviously in the beginning you guys were doing soap and candles. Obviously, tell me a little bit more about that kind of aspect, because obviously that's two different, very different productions, a lot of hand-on work on that. Tell me a little bit like how, was there like an evolution there where you're kind of like, hey, I kind of need to evolve the brand, but kind of keep things, keep that being elements of it?
Yeah, there was an evolution, right? Like when we first started, it was only a couple cents, and we were able to, manage, I would say, everything. And, as we were growing, candles just took over. Right. I would still argue today that like 95% of our sales are, probably, that candle product. So we started looking for, and we started looking for someone to help us manufacture, where we were kind of like, hey, we make candles for other people. Maybe someone can make our soaps. So it was really important to me that we found a Orlando-based business. It was really important to me that we looked into a women-owned or women-owned business, because that's kind of, that's what we are. And, we eventually found the ladies at Naked Bar Soap Company here in Orlando, and, they're awesome to work with. And, we partnered with them and made 3 exclusive soaps for our brand, to kind of keep that part of the name alive, right? Wash for soap, Wik for candle.
If you pull the metrics, it would be 99.5% candles and a little bit of soap. And for some reason, one just caught on more than the other.
Yeah.
So from a facility standpoint, continuing to make both just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So we reached out to find a partner, and it's really worked out, beautifully for us.
Yeah. So we still offer our soap today, just to kind of, give a little homage to how we started, and to keep the name to make sense, right? Wash and Wik. But, aside from candles, we are still making our reed diffusers, and our wax melts and our other products like that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I thought was very interesting, was the fact that you guys have created, you have your scents, but then you kind of created various different SKUs in different areas of how you can kind of accept, or I guess enjoy those scents. And that's kind of one of the fun things about it. But at the same time, it also adds more work, because you're not just creating like, oh, well, we're just doing like a 2-wick candle. It's like, I think you have like one that's like 5, like this 20, like this is massive. I mean, granted, I would be perfectly fine with it, but it's like, it'll be, and out of curiosity, because you also use soy, when it comes to that.
100% soy wax. Yeah.
So all these things, I mean, like, how are you guys handling that inventory of constantly trying to go? Because I mean, that's a lot of pouring. That's a lot of, how are you guys handling all of that? When it comes to supplies and just kind of handling just the amount of product to create so many different SKUs.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of sheets and documents and spreadsheets.
His nickname is Spreadsheets.
Are you serious?
And, lovingly, I think at my corporate world and here at home, I guess, but I think it helps keep us organized, right? So, by day when Ariel is running the business, she's printing out orders, she's labeling candles, she's delivering orders to our local accounts in the UPS stores, but more importantly, she is preparing the make boards, right? So we have different clipboards, which are our order boards, samples that need to be made, and orders for wholesale that need to be made, and orders for private label. So she is keeping me in line with that. And, when I walk in the door to, do my nighttime pour, if you will, I am looking at that, and that is telling me what I need to make for the day. And, next to that, I have an inventory sheet, right? So as I'm using this product, if I'm like, oh, I'm down to only 5 pounds of this particular oil, time to add that to the board and, keep that inventory running.
And we've also just had to increase quantities.
Yeah.
Instead of buying, 1 box of wicks, we'll buy 10 at a time.
Yeah.
And when it gets down to 2, okay, we need to re-up that par to 10.
Yeah.
And, having a dedicated, it sounds so simple, and it really is, but we have a board that sits on the wall, and when we realize we're low on something, we put it on there, and then we order things maybe 2-3 days a week, because we do have so many different vendors. And so as we have that need, we'll put those orders in.
Right. Yeah. And we had to bulk up, right? When we first started, we ordered 1 case of 50 pounds of wax, and we're like, this is going to last us forever. Right. And now I think in a night, I could go through 8 of those cases.
Wow.
Right. So, now we have 2 pallets, about 4,000 pounds of wax delivered to our unit, at a time, because, it's just in order to keep up. And, I think a part of us has a little chip on her shoulder from supply chain issues with COVID. So now I also kind of, carefully live in fear of inventory issues too,
Yeah,
right?
no, I
Because
get
that's
that.
you need it to make your products.
So how do you balance? And I'm not talking about balance of the business. I'm talking about balance life, because you have 2 little ones.
We do.
And I hear a lot of Gary going, I start pouring at night and all that stuff. So like, I guess I'll go with the simple question. What do you do for fun when you're not actually pouring, doing candles, and having to do with like young toddlers?
What do we do for fun? That's a great question. I don't know if we remember what fun is. No, I mean, we love to travel. That really is one of our passions. We have 2 best friends who live in Chicago, and we like to plan, 1 or 2 trips a year with them. So definitely travel. We still love food and beverage, so eating new things, drinking new things. Right. I guess to answer your question, like, how do we balance it?
Yeah.
Every small business owner will say, you work 24/7. To me, balance is, we're going to work 24/7. We're going to, be doing whatever we need to do until 10 p.m., 11 p.m. But maybe it's 1 weekend a month, we're at the beach and we turn things off and we're not working. And so if I need to work, 27 days, kind of crazy, but 3 days you're completely off, okay, that's imbalance to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, we could plan a trip well in advance and, know what's coming, right? We can know what giant wholesale orders we might have or private label orders coming up, and we can plan accordingly as well. So yeah, I think trips and I think food, like I think that still is our favorite thing to do. We love experiences like that.
I think on the weekends too, because we do have kids and we can't just, we want to spend time with them.
Yeah, of course.
We'll look at the weekend and say, okay, what are going to be like 2 fun activities? So, we really enjoy Formula One. So we'll go up to the movie room and we'll make it like a whole experience with our toddler about, he'll bring his toy race cars and we'll watch the Formula One race.
He knows all the race car drivers. He shouts them out by name, and, we just make sure we...
So, that's our fun activity before we have to dive into work, or, we'll go to the farmer's market. But making sure the weekends have a little bit of, it's nothing extravagant, but what are we doing that's not work, that's family related? And try to get out of the house, because we both work from home. We're home a lot. It's a lot of being home. So, go to the farmer's market in the morning, maybe the splash pad with our 3-year-old, and then kind of dive back into it. But you have to map out your time, or you'll just lose track of it.
Yeah, it's very easy to kind of get lost in the weeds.
Yeah.
Or in you guys pouring wax would definitely be. I could see that kind of going. Gary, out of curiosity, when you're pouring wax, I saw a TV in your room. In the area where you're pouring, do you listen to music? Is there anything that you guys are like you're jamming out to? What do you what's the because there's got to be something like because I know like when I'm packing orders, I got some music going. I got like some playlist or something going.
For sure.
What do you usually have going on?
I have a couple
or
answers for that. It kind of depends, right? So I can be easily distracted. So if I have a big order and there's a tight deadline, Google is playing something, right? Like classic rock music, the hits I used to listen to with my dad when we used to go work with him. But if I have a little bit of time, I'm throwing on The Office or Brooklyn Nine-Nine or
those are my favorite shows.
My goodness, what have we just been watching lately?
New Girl,
anything like that, right? I guess Peacock, right? Thank you. But throw on that show, and I've seen them so many times where I can recite The Office by without looking.
You just need it as a background.
My
you
AirPods
just need it.
in, yeah, exactly, and just have that on in the background. And I will say the last couple of days I have been listening to your podcast. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Of course. And then I know you have a completely different answer.
So I have a separate labeling area.
Okay.
So where I can be a little bit more flexible with our two little ones.
Yeah.
So for like labeling and finishing, and I have two modes. I can turn on a show, which recently I like to rewatch something usually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm rewatching through Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
But I always fall off around season 9 because it just gets too ridiculous. Before that, I watched all of Great British Bake Off.
Okay.
Like every season, rewatch seasons. Yeah. But then when we're on a tight deadline and I get the kind of nudge from Gary of like, hey, you need to pick up the pace. I'm listening to music. And it's like Alesso or EDM, something that's like really high energy. Mm-hmm. And I can just kind of zone out and groove out too.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's usually kind of how I'll kind of do it as well. Like I'll have, sometimes it'll be a movie. I have Brooklyn Nine-Nine is always, it's like that. Or
so
my daughter's gotten into a bunch of different shows as well. Like her big thing now is Gilmore Girls. Like she just keeps watching that.
Yeah, she loves that.
But for the most part, like we usually will watch like a Superstore or one of those type of shows.
That's Showtime.
Right?
That's what we just finished.
Like, yeah, I think what it is, like I love ensemble shows. Mm-hmm. I've come to the conclusion, like those are my favorite comedies, are the ensemble comedies. And so like I'll love watching those. And so during COVID, my daughter realized and got into watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine because I would just play it so I could have it in the background as I'm working and during my day job. But then I would also sometimes leave it on, or I would just kind of just have music or something going on when I'm in my office trying to pack orders and stuff.
You need it. It keeps you on time and maintains that focus.
Yeah, exactly. What would you say is like your favorite part of running the business? Because obviously, and I'm gonna go back to something because I want to point out something that I've kind of learned from, because you guys put so many hours in. There's definitely a love. It's like, I'm pretty sure, I mean, obviously it's work, but there's a love that you guys have found to do this and create, and like what you're creating, which I think is so important, because I think a lot of people, and I don't know if you have people like this in your life, but there's a lot of people that tend to ask me sometimes, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you killing yourself? Why are you doing this? You have other things. Like, you can just have like a regular job and that's it. And I just say, no, I'm like that. I enjoy this. This is like, even though it's work, is that kind of, and that's kind of how I get it from you guys, is like that same feeling. It's kind of like, obviously it's a business, but it's something that you guys are passionate about and you enjoy.
Yeah, it is. It's really gratifying seeing something come together. I think both of us do have an entrepreneurial spirit. Funny enough, I think in college, I was told you don't necessarily want to start your own business or, specifically open your own restaurant because it's really expensive and you'll lose a lot of money. So go work for a bigger corporation and you can play with their money. And I was like, okay, I understand that. But now being able to work for ourselves and only have to really report to us, and and we've grown this thing, and to see how it's grown over time, it is really fulfilling. I never thought that I would be here saying, yeah, we make candles for a living. It sounds such like an old school thing, like, oh, the candlestick maker. But it is, it is incredibly gratifying to grow something together and to say, hey, we built that.
Yeah, and it's crazy to say, we quite literally probably each put at least 60, 65, 70 hours a week into this. We pouring, labeling, all of that, each. So it's crazy to say that many hours on top of maybe a day job or something like that there's more flexibility, but in a sense, it gives you more flexibility, right? You can plan things out, like we were saying, and it allows you to keep being creative, right? Like, it's funny, you almost think, and I'm sure for yourself, right, you almost think, what did I used to do with the time before the business, right? Like, what did I fill that up with, right? And we make sure there is a balance, right? And I do think having our kids has taught us to definitely live a more balanced life, which we're so grateful for. But I do think pouring all that time, I do love the flexibility of owning our own business and being able to do what we want. And then I think the gratifying part is, like, right, if we go to the neighbors and go eat, pasta at Danilo's walk-up bar, and we happen to look over and someone's smelling one of our candles, we're like, that's so cool, right? Like, someone, like, I just poured that, right? Or at the Gideon's line at East End, and someone's ordering a cookie in front of us and they're smelling a candle, and I'm like,
it doesn't get old. It's still a very cool feeling.
No, I think that's
smiling,
pretty,
saying,
it's pretty awesome.
It's cool.
And I'm not gonna, we can't lie. We have been able to see some of the financial reward of running our own business.
Of course.
Right? I mean, we're in a business for a reason. We spent 3.5 years not taking a cent out of the business. And then when I started doing it full time, maybe even 6 months after that, we finally said, okay, like, we have the means to pay ourselves. We have been, and we are 100% self-funded. We've never taken out a loan or a grant, anything like that. And I think as a small business owner, knowing when you can start paying yourself is really tricky. But also having the flexibility, and people are always like, oh, you write your own paycheck. That must be so cool. You can just give yourself whatever you want. And there's more to it, right? You still have expenses. But also, there were a couple months, or there have been a couple months over time where it's like, hey, we paid ourselves in January. February and March were not what we thought, and you take zero. And you have to balance that out too. So, but finally being able to make a product, see it come to life, and then reap the benefits, financially, but then also emotionally, and, it really is fulfilling.
No, I love that. And I think that's the amazing part about it. I think that's, like, the big thing. I have 2 questions before we kind of start wrapping up, because it is a lunch break. One of the things I'm kind of curious of, and I always try to I've been more and more intrigued by this, do both of you, because you mentioned college, was there always an entrepreneurial spirit? Like, did you have, like, a entrepreneurial, like, role model, I guess, that kind of led you through this? Because I don't feel like everyone, I've noticed from what I've noticed on my podcast, doing this for like 2 years now, that a lot of people usually do have someone, or there's just like a spirit of them. That's how it is. Like, I think it's like, so I'm kind of curious what you guys have.
So I don't think so much for myself. It's something I've come into. I just really wanted to brag about Gary because he's so entrepreneurial focused. Like, a really fun story. We were dating, and he decided he was going to wash his car at his apartment. I was at work, and he's just washing his car like a typical job.
Yeah.
And I come home, and there are 2 or 3 huge, like, plastic bins, soap, car wax, polishing cloths. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I'm going to start a car wash business where I go to people's homes and I will wash their car at their home. And I mean, Gary doesn't wash cars, so, like, that didn't work out for him. But that has always been his mindset of, okay, how can I innovate? How can I make this better? How is this something I would enjoy to do? And that's just one example. And I think it's kind of funny to laugh on it now, but you've always been that way.
I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think, to Ariel's point, I think there 1 to 2 times a day I'm probably thinking about a new
Really?
idea, right? Mostly
Yeah.
something for the business now, but like we are launching a subsidiary of Wash and Wik very soon. It's going to be more of the home decor side,
Nice.
and that's finally happening. But I think we're always thinking of like new ideas, like what can we do? How can we capture this market? So that's always been, kind of how I run. And I think my role model was my father. I grew up with a dad who, he didn't finish college, but he owned a very successful tile business. So I saw my dad 6 days a week wake up at 5:30 in the morning, go drive to a customer's house and then come home at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. And it was a one-man show, right? Like, it was hard work. That is, my first job was at McDonald's at 14 years old. And, but I was, 12 years old helping him mix cement and carry, cement and tile upstairs, at a house in the Hamptons as we were tiling it, So I watched my dad my entire life, he owned his own business for about 32 years. I watched him hustle, and I know how much that meant to me as a kid.
Yeah.
And more so now as I look back at it, I know what he put into it, and it meant so much. And I think if I can give half that feeling to Grayson and Graham, our sons, later in life, I think that would be the coolest. I want them to see that we are working hard, but you work hard and you do reap some benefits, and you get to enjoy special moments, and
Exactly.
and now we include them, right? Grayson is 3.5 years old, and
Yeah.
he helps put stickers on Wix. And he enjoys it. He thinks it's fun, and he thinks it's a game, and we make it something.
He also probably assumes that's normal. Like
Right.
that's
That's all
the
he
amazing
knows.
that's the amazing part about it, because with my daughter being 15, she thinks it's normal. And when I ask her, I'm like, "Hey, do you ever think it's weird?" She's like, "I don't know. This is what you do, Dad. Like, this is what it is."
Yeah.
And I'm like, she doesn't think any other way of how that is. Like, that's just a normal life. And I'm always kind of intrigued with when it comes to that, because I've talked to some parents who are entrepreneurial and have businesses, and then their kids sometimes don't want to do it because they see what their parents do, but then others get inspired by it and they're like, yeah, this is normal. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. What advice would you give someone if they were going to be starting something? I think you guys are a great example because of the fact that you guys kind of evolved and kind of continue building upon your brand and your business. So I'm always kind of curious, like, what advice would you give someone when they're wanting to start something?
Not every idea is $1 million idea. And so it's really hard to know what's going to be the thing that kind of clicks. So it's difficult, right? Because you have to take that risk. We started making candles on a hope, a wish, and a prayer, and we've been able to grow it. I would say if we hadn't seen success with it, we would have you have to cut it off at some point. And so you kind of have to say in your mind, how long am I going to let this go? You have to check yourself that way. And until that point, you have to be very dedicated. If this is a business that you want to be successful, you have to dive in. And that doesn't mean necessarily quit your job. Gary still has a full 9-to-5
Full-time
job.
job, yeah.
But you do have to, you kind of have to have like good judgment. Gary starting a car wash business, I don't think was the right way to go.
I was super pumped though. I had a
You were
clean
so
car.
excited. Oh, yeah.
Every week I cleaned my car for many weeks. I had so much soap left over.
But and maybe for someone else it would have.
Yeah.
It didn't spark the joy. So it's this weird dichotomy of you have to take the risk, you have to jump in, but then you have to say, okay, at what point is this not happening? And I need to move on from it. So I think being able to check yourself or have someone who will say, hey, you've been doing this for a year. What have you made from it? I think in a tactile way, start tracking very generally expenses and revenue. And I think it's, it's considered very gauche to talk about money with people.
Yeah.
But again, if you're running a business and you might have a very good product, but not understand that what is cost of goods? How much should I mark this up? Okay, I'm selling it for $5. Am I making enough out of it? And people are kind of timid to have that conversation. But at the beginning, just kind of track, open up Excel and just put everything you buy, very simply.
Right.
And
I'm sure you have
write
this.
and then write how much revenue you make,
Yeah.
and just see if it equals a net. If you can kind of break even, okay, we're on the right track. But I think a lot of small businesses are like, I want to open a business on a whim, and then I'm just going to put a lot of money into it, and you have no idea where it's going, what it's doing. So you have to have some organization to it. So I think, to summarize, be committed, dive in, do it. You can do it. Know when you need to pull yourself out of it, and you have to have some sort of organization. You can't just blindly buy things and expect it to make money.
Yeah. And you probably have this too, right? Like we were joking half-heartedly before, but we have so many spreadsheets, right? Like every candle, every SKU has a costing sheet, right? Like I know down to the penny what it costs us to make it, and we update it as costs go up, right? Because costs have gone up since COVID, and they've never gone down. And we have those to kind of check ourselves there too. But I think for me, Ariel kind of took part of it. It has to give you a spark, a joy. You have to have a passion for it, because 50% of it, I believe, is people see your passion and they want to know more about it, right? Like you are so passionate about sandwiches, right? That became your brand. Correct. Right? So, I think that's a big part of it as well. For me, for anyone starting a business, every year we do this. We sit down, we have a goal meeting in about November, December, before the next calendar year. And we have a big 20 by 16 piece of paper that hangs up every year. And it is 5 columns of goals. There's a revenue component. There's how many new products are we releasing, what we're doing with the community, something involving our website or wholesale website, and then more maybe buy a new melter, buy a new piece of equipment. And we write down our goals for the entire year. It's not something that we write in November that we're supposed to start in January that we're supposed to achieve in February. It is realistic goals that we are trying to hit by November, December, end of year. And, we do our numbers. I sit down, do the numbers every month. We make a budget, we make a forecast. We try to see where we're going with our revenue for the year. But I mean, it's getting to the point where I think we're getting pretty good by the November, the year before, we're able to know what we're going to do next year just based on increases in forecastings. But it's because of that goal. It's being constantly reminded. It's the first thing we see when we walk in that door is what our goal is. It's maybe I should spend an extra hour pouring candles. I might be really tired, but look at that goal on that door. I have to get to it. So I'm big on writing down goals, because part of it's manifestation, right? If you see it every single day, you're going to start to believe in it, believe in yourself, and continue to believe in the business, which you did from the get-go because you wanted to start it.
A goal should also push you a little bit. Something we wanted to get back to is doing more in-person events, because we pulled back. Yeah. And we made that as a goal. And I think, 3-4 months of the year had gone by, and I said, oh my goodness, we haven't done one. We need to sit down and, plan some events out and really, get back to it. So it is supposed to push you. And we don't always make everyone at the end of the year. But then we can reassess and say, okay, do I want to keep this? Do I want to change it? But they help push you along. Yeah. And again, they help you grow. They help you innovate. It really is a fantastic tool.
No, I totally agree. I agree. I do a vision board as well. I do a family one, and then I do we do a family one. I do an individual one. And there's usually a deli fresh one. I also try to make it a point to, I'm sometimes better at it than other years, but I also will make it a point to kind of write down, put somewhere and jot down the little wins that happen. So that way at the end of the year, I can kind of go back and reflect, because what happens is during the course of the year, we don't remember. We don't remember what happened 6 months ago. And then you forget. You're like, oh, yeah, remember when you did that collab with those people? Or when you did this special thing? You're like, oh, I totally forgot about that. That was amazing. And then you start realizing like, hey, this led to this. And then you kind of can see how all these things kind of connect.
And it's so important to celebrate those wins.
For sure.
Right. And if you're just starting, right,
Yeah.
it's your first sale, it's your 10th sale, it's your 100th sale. It's so important to celebrate those wins, even if it's with yourself. It's just that just helps the process, right? Because you need to have the mindset. When
you guys started, I'm always intrigued by this, how, especially with the people around you, like, did you have a lot of people that kind of just said, like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, why are you guys doing this? Like, who wants candle? Like, you can get a candle anywhere. Why would I do this? Like, did you have a lot of people that do that? Because I mean, obviously, I get a lot of people that ask me, like, why would you start what you're doing? But like, did you have a lot of those people like that?
I think because we started it truly as a hobby, doing it on the side, and I'll call myself out. I wasn't even a believer until we really started to progress. Right.
There was a point where I was pouring candles and labeling them all in the office themselves, ourselves. And I was like, look what I did today.
I think, I had it, mentally, I was like, okay, I'm not going to take this seriously yet because I don't want to get lost in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you kind of see the trajectory, I was like, okay, this is a real thing. But, my parents are so supportive. I don't think they necessarily understand how much volume we do. And so every time my dad comes over, and I love my dad, he's the best, but he'll go, oh, do you have like a new person you're kind of making things for? And I'm like, yeah, Dad, we're constantly making stuff for everyone. Like,
has he not been into your work area where your shop is like literally, like I looked in there and I was like, oh, I'm like the whole wall of wax, like basically like of just boxes of just wax.
Yeah. And it's more so, not understanding or just not knowing, right? The necessary scale. Yeah. And again, such a big supporter, but maybe just not privy to the fact that like every day we have orders coming in from somewhere, whether it's a wholesale site or Etsy or, a private client. But I think because I had that mentality of like, this is a hobby until it's not, but let's not put the cart before the horse. Mm-hmm. So I would say no.
Okay.
I think we had a lot of head turns, right? Because I've been working in hospitality since I was 14. Ariel, you 14 or 15, right? So we have a 35-year collective hospitality experience, and we were in restaurants most of our lives. So that is a different hustle and bustle, and that's completely different world. And then these people, you surround yourself with people who are in the same circles, right? So when they find out, you're like, what are you doing when you get home?
Yeah, I think now when I go back, when I interact with anyone who I used to work with and they say, oh, what have you been up to? Are you, working for a wine company? I'm like, no, we own a candle company. They're like, what? Yeah, and it's cool because like we know the success, but it does sound so random. And so I think it's now kind of showing people like, would you like to, do you want to see what we do? So not really, I don't think we really had a lot of pushback in the beginning.
Yeah, I think both our parents were so supportive from the beginning. And, it was more, again, like you said, it was more like, what are you guys doing? Oh, okay.
That's cute. Cool. Yeah. Like, that's cute. We'll see how long this lasts. And now
my mom and dad, when they come down from New York, they're making wicks and they're helping do stuff. They go
get people to work. I get it.
They go to work.
You need all hands on deck. Yeah. I totally get that. That's awesome. Where can people follow you? Where can they shop? Where can they do all that?
Yeah. So best place to follow us is Instagram. It's at Wash and Wik. And it's WASHANDWIK, Wik with no C. And then that's the same social media handle for everything. And then, or you can go to www.washandwik.com.
Perfect. Do you have anything else to say?
If you're local to Orlando and you want to find us, just a couple of people we want to plug.
Yeah, please plug away.
The Neighbors have our candles. Mm-hmm. They're great in East End Market. Maffrey's sells some of our candles. And then we have various other not our brand, but other brands.
Private label.
Private
That you
labels that
produce.
we've made.
Yeah.
Yeah. All throughout Orlando.
Do you want to produce? You want to plug some of those? Some
Yeah,
of those are, by the way, some of these, all these, a lot of these names are have been guests on my podcast. So
Yeah,
you can,
no, so
which is great too. So go on.
many people know us from, being the Candles of Gideon's Bakehouse. Again, we do the salty donut, Kelly's ice cream, Pizza Bruno has candles, Honolulu Harry's, Bros with Hose. We just started working with a company who is online retail only, but really cool concept called Peculiar Pumpkin. So definitely check them out. They just launched this week.
Okay.
But really cool scents, all inspired by Halloween. So definitely check them out. But yeah, I mean, it's
That's where you can find us locally.
That's where you can find us locally. So
That's amazing. We'll talk offline because I'm kind of curious on. I was thinking about this when last night because I always talk to my wife about my guests and we'll have to talk about this, but this is, I'm going to leave this thought before I close. Like, what candle would actually be like a good food candle? Because obviously baked goods are great, but I was like jokingly telling her, I was like, what would be a good sandwich candle? Or like, and I was like, no one wants a Chick-fil-A candle like that smells like Chick-fil-A, because I'm like, your car smells like it, but after a while you don't want that. And so then my wife started laughing and she's like, oh, do not start thinking. I'm like, bacon? I'm like, would a bacon candle work? And then she's like, do you really want to have all that smelled out all the time? I'm like, no, I don't. But I'm like, but I was like, it just made me laugh because I was just like thinking about, I'm like, what smell would food wise would I want to have that I could smell all day? So it's definitely something very interesting that you guys do. That's our show for today. Thank you so much for Ariel and to Gary for being on from Wash and Wik. Definitely make sure to check them out online. If you go to any of these locations, I would love for you to take a picture with their product, or if not, at least share your product with them. I definitely appreciate that. If you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe. If you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads, do some shopping there, tell all your friends about us. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.